Well, good morning. My name's Steve. I'm the vicar here at St Lawrence's Church, Biddulph. And if you're watching this sermon online, can I encourage you to just pause this video for a moment, to get your Bible out, and to look at Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 to 20, and have a read through that before you listen to the rest of this sermon. So in our service today, we've heard what it's been like for our children and young people to go back to school. With COVID-19, there's been lots of new rules. And that's been the same for all of us, hasn't it? Face masks, social distancing, bubbles, self-isolating. I wonder how you feel about all the new rules. I know that some don't like them, and sadly some ignore them. I know that others are really glad for them. It makes them feel safe, and I guess there's a whole mix in between. Whether you're a family or a school or a workplace or a community group, we all need common rules to live by. That's how communities work well. The church is a community of faith, and just like any other community, we need guidelines, rules, shared values if we're to be healthy. The amazing thing about the church is that it's Jesus who lays down those rules, and you can't get a better authority than that. The vision statement of us as a church is to be a kingdom tree, a community of faith that loves Jesus, that follows his teaching, that grows the church and serves Biddulph and the world in love. In our Bible reading from Matthew's Gospel, we hear Jesus' teaching, and I simply want to encourage us to follow, to live out this teaching. So how did you react to our Bible reading? Well, when some people hear this reading, they don't feel very comfortable with it. On the other hand, some people really like it. And then just the same as with any other rule or guideline, there's a whole mix of reactions and emotions in between. So let me start by naming some of the house rules that I think we in our society live by. They're not necessarily positive, but I think they genuinely are some of the rules of our society. Number 1, mind your own business. Number 2, if in doubt, don't interfere. Number 3, my rights, my personal choice and freedom come first. And if that might be hurting others. In our Bible reading, Jesus tells us that we and his disciples should live a very different way. Let me remind you, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. So let's start by exploring how not to do this, Number 1, don't email or use WhatsApp or Messenger or, worst of all, a public Facebook post. Email and anything typed is absolutely shocking for conveying tone, even if you're seeking to be gracious and gentle. We all know that won't come across. So do as Jesus suggests. Do this in person. Rule number 2, don't do it like this. Picture the scene. Hi, Chris. Can I come in for a chat? Right, now I'm going to get straight to the point. I've come round to your house because I've been keeping an eye on you. It's been for a while now, and I'm not happy about how you do with anger. I think you're out of order, so I've come round to tell you you're out of line. And if I don't see some changes pretty soon, I'm going to have to get more people involved. How would you feel if you were spoken to like that? I think some Chris's might explode at that. I hope it's obvious, but going round to someone else's house unexpectedly to be confrontational and accusatory isn't going to go well. So here's how I would do this. I'm not saying it's a one-size-fits-all, but it gives you an idea of how I try and approach following this teaching. So, number 1, I'd ask to meet up for a walk and talk. Somewhere private, somewhere where it's easy to talk without being overheard, obviously. Number 2, I'd chat first. I'd ask Chris how he was doing, all that kind of stuff. You never know, it might be that during that conversation, Chris unloads that there's stresses and strains that are putting him under pressure. The whole reason for the conversation might just come out naturally. Chris may be ready to talk. He may have been waiting for someone to give him that opportunity. But then, if it hasn't already come up, I'd say something like this. Chris, I just wanted to have a chat with you because I've noticed you're not your normal self. You seem a bit on edge, and being totally honest, there's been a few times where you've been a bit snappy with the kids and the missus, and I want to see if there's anything going on, anything I can help with. We all have pressure points. I'm not here to throw rocks at you and to point at you, but just as a mate, just as church family, I wanted to see if I could help you at all. How would the rest of the conversation go? I don't know. But what I do know is that in every way I could, I'd make sure that the next bit of the conversation was all about me listening, all about me saying as little as possible, and in every way me trying to offer grace. But what if Chris doesn't listen? What if he tells me to stick my nose out of his business? Well, our society would say, you've tried, write him off. That's how we roll in our society these days, isn't it? Everything in our society is disposable, even relationships. Our society says if you disagree with someone, just move on. Even if they're hurting others, unless it's illegal, just walk on by on the other side. It's their problem, not your problem. Forget them, block them, move on. But Jesus says his followers must follow different rules. Jesus says his church family connects and live deeper than that. Jesus says, with the same grace, confidentiality, and sensitivity, try again. Verse 16, but if they will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Jesus says, when you're trying again, take someone else along who doesn't have the baggage of your last meeting. Ask another friend, another church family member, or at most a couple of people that Chris respects and knows well and feels comfortable with. You don't take someone to side with you, but someone that Chris trusts and that he might listen to and take on board their thoughts too. Jesus is clear. You don't give up on them, but in an appropriate way, you bring in another perspective. Let me again just give you a little tip on how not to do this. Hi, Chris. You know we had that tricky chat. Well, this time I brought Dave so I can confront you with a witness. We've both been keeping an eye on you for a month now. I brought Dave into the picture, and we've been having regular chats about you, and we're here to confront you and get you to admit that you're wrong. Again, tone, attitude, grace, love are so important. Remember, Jesus said, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. You're not here to cast stones. You're not here to win an argument. You're here to help out a friend. You see, in this passage, Jesus isn't just giving the church rules for how they deal with when someone sins. He's actually giving them and us a bigger picture of how we should be as a church family. Jesus says his followers care. His followers care enough to appropriately challenge one another. His followers have the depth of relationship where, though it's tough, they're able to face difficult conversations. His followers are deeply involved in one another's lives. They know each other's stuff, the good and the bad. Our passage reminds us that in Jesus' eyes, we are brothers and sisters. We are our brother and sister's keeper. We are family. You see, this passage isn't about how to kick people out of the church family. This is Jesus teaching about how we are all responsible for helping each other to stay in the church family, to stay on course in following Jesus. This passage isn't about 3 strikes and you're out. This is about how to live as a community of love and grace. Because Jesus shows us how to live this out by his own example. Let's look at his disciples. Do the disciples screw up and get things wrong? Yes. To name just a few of their shortcomings, at points in their discipleship, they are racist, self-absorbed, deceitful, and regularly, seriously lacking in faith. Does Jesus challenge them on these things? Yes, he totally does. But he challenges them to restore them, not to bin them. Which takes us to the second part of our reading, which reminds us why this matters. Verse 18, truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you that if 2 of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them. As God's people, we have power and authority. The world needs us to exercise that power. If we don't pray against evil and command blessing and healing, who else will? If we don't show people there is another way, following Jesus' teaching, who will? So here's the application of my sermon today. How can you deepen your relationship with your brothers and sisters in the church? How can we create a community where we know each other properly, where we know when we are struggling? How can we create a depth of relationship where we can have difficult conversations without it feeling totally weird and inappropriate? Here's a few thoughts that I'm sure won't surprise you coming from my lips. Church is about being a family, a community, a body, the body of Christ, a fellowship. It's not a building or a venue for services. Why not start or join a home group or a prayer triplet? Why not make a conscious effort to get to know people you don't know in church? And why not consciously make an effort to get to know people you do know even better? Why not call someone on your page pastor page? Why not arrange to go out for a walk as a small group or a few groups of families? What can you do to follow Jesus' teaching to deepen your relationships so that you can follow his teaching in holding one another accountable, in caring for one another and helping one another to follow Jesus' teaching, and deepening those relationships so as the church we can serve Biddulph and the world in love, being the people of God, exercising the authority in prayer that we have been given through Jesus. Something to think on.